The first group of people we're going to talk about are the Ancestral Puebloans. We're in the southwest corner of the state because that is where they were. We think they came to Colorado around 1000 AD and they stayed for 200 to 300 years. And the three artifacts that we have to explore that tell us more about the Ancestral Puebloans, I have two helpers to show you. This is my son, Micah, and he has two artifacts. Can you hold them up for everybody? And then my daughter, Charlie, has an artifact as well. So I'm going to read the clues about the artifacts, and you are going to see if you can guess which artifact they're talking about, or the clue is talking about. And then my kids will help you make the connection. People could cook in me or store food in me. Sometimes I have patterns on the outside because I am made of clay. I break easily. So, go ahead and hold it up, Micah. That is the pottery shard. And you can see there's a pattern of paint on the outside of it. And so archaeologists found all sorts of pottery shards all over the southwest corner of our state, letting them know that that is where the Ancestral Puebloans lived. They made lots of pots out of clay to cook in and to store grains. Their primary grain was corn, and we're going to talk more about that in a minute. My Spanish name is mano, meaning hand. The Ancestral Puebloans used me to grind corn into a fine grit for cooking. And I think Charlie gave it away. That's this. And it's just a rock, as you might have seen or noticed. And in the museum, we have a mano and a metate, which is a big flat rock. And what they would do is they would they grow their corn, they pour it on, and then they would just grind up the kernels into flour, and then they would cook with it. Last clue, the Ancestral Puebloans grew me in hot, dry fields. I didn't grow very big or tall because there was not much water. Which one's that? The corn. And that's probably a pretty good life-size replica of what, about how big their corn was. And I think in some of the activities on History Colorado, they have pictures of their cornfields. I mean, it just looks like this dry, barren field with a few plants. And ultimately, that's actually why Ancestral Puebloans left Colorado. They went further south and west over here in like New Mexico, Arizona, looking for places that were less arid, less hot, less dry. And apparently they found them down there. And so they were only in Colorado for a couple hundred years. The next group that we're going to talk about are the Hispanos. They lived and still live in the San Luis Valley in the southern central part of the state. They came to Colorado in the 1850s. At that time, Colorado, right before that, Colorado was technically part of Spain and then Mexico until it eventually became part of the United States. So we have three artifacts here that will help us understand a little bit more about the Hispanos. We have this, and these. And Charlie Rose is going to read us the clues, and Micah and I will help you distinguish which belongs to what artifact.
I add heat and spice to food. People often dry me and hang me on chains called ristras.
Which one is that? That's right, chili peppers. They grew peppers down there. It's a great climate for it, and they would hang them in chains. I'm sure you've seen them if you've been to that part of the state. Next one.
I am the fur of sheep. Sheep herders shear me off in the springtime. I can be spun into yarn and then woven into clothes or rugs.
That's right. So the Hispanos were sheep herders, and they also, of course, they turned all of the sheep's fur into wool and made it into coats, hats, everything that they needed to survive the nasty winters down there. Last one.
I am a folk charm used by Hispanos healers to help people who are hurt. I come in many shapes and represent different problems.
So that, of course, is talking about these charms. And the Spanish name for that is milagros, and the Hispanos were Spanish-speaking people. Can you just move your hand out of there? Thank you. So the milagros each had something that they symbolized, and the healers would use these and give them to people to pray. They would pray for things like health, prosperity, love, and so that was a really important part of their healing and traditions. Other important facts about the Hispanos, they were Spanish-speaking. They never left. They are still here in the south central-ish part of the state, and they still raise sheep. And originally, they lived in homes that were built from adobe bricks, clay bricks, and they mixed that with straw, mud, and water to make adobe homes for them to live in. There was also they were the ones that made Colorado's first irrigation ditch. Colorado's oldest church was constructed by the Hispanos, and they also founded Colorado's oldest continually existing towns that are down there. The next group of people we're going to talk about are the Utes. The Utes are the longest continuously living people in the state of Colorado. They were here about 1,000 years AD until, well, they're still here now, but until about the late 1800s when they were forced out onto reservations in Utah and southern Colorado. We have 3 artifacts here to tell us more about the Utes. There's this, and this, and this. And the clues are as follows. I was used to lead a horse. The Utes were very good horsemen and one of the first tribes to ride and trade horses. So that's talking about this reign. The Utes didn't always have horses. They were introduced to the Utes in the 1800s when the Spanish people, which would be part of the Hispanos that we talked about, came into Colorado to really explore it, and then from that, the horse became a really important part of the Ute culture. Okay, next artifact clue. The Utes tanned me into soft leather that they made into clothing, bags, and moccasins. The Utes traded me for other items that they needed. That's talking about this deer skin here. So yes, the deer skin really did provide a lot of their clothing and their shoes, their moccasins. They also hunted other animals in this area too, including elk, rabbits, but the deer, I think, provided them a lot of their materials. The last one, I make beautiful music. The Utes used me with rattles and drums at dances. Would you like to demonstrate this instrument sound, Micah? So music, as for many Native American cultures, was a really important, not quite yet, Charlie, was a really important part of the Utes culture. They had big dances just for celebrations of seasons, and they also had big dances and powwows before they went to war as well. And music was a part of all of that. Other thing about the Utes is there were 7 bands of Utes that lived throughout the northwest corner of Colorado, including the Yampitica Band, which were in this area in Steamboat Springs. And they were nomadic, just like the Cheyenne and Arapaho, which we'll talk about in a minute. So that means that they were in the Steamboat area, as were all the Ute bands. They were all nomadic, but the Yampitica were in the Steamboat area in the summer. They took advantage of the hot springs. It was a really important part of their culture. They really felt like the hot springs were medicinal for them. So they used them to improve their health. And then in the winter, they went further south. And so they lived in wickiups, which was kind of like a teepee, but minus the skin. They were literally structures made of all sticks that they'd stack on top of each other. So they lived in wickiups, which is why they didn't live here in the winter. And I think that is it. One more video to go. Go ahead and go to the YouTube page for Tread of Pioneers Museum, find Moving Day Part 3, and click on that to complete the program.